Playing for Keeps, presented by Jiffy Lube. With the voice, Milt Thompson. Delivering the best of sports programming. Interviews with top celebrities. And the answer to the question, where are they now? And now, Milt Thompson, Playing for Keeps.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Playing for Keeps. I am your host, the voice, Milt Thompson. Right back here again every Friday night at 9 p.m. You know, we bring you the best in sports programming here on Channel 40. And today is nothing different. In fact, we're going to have a fantastic show. It's going to be such a show, it'll be unflappable, I promise you. You know, we had so many responses and letters from the two-part show with Sandy Knapp. The matriarch, the woman who really helped us lead the sports strategy here in Central Indiana. Put us on the map, if you will. Guided us through the sports festival, the Pan American Games, and all the way through the Super Bowl, and then made for this moment, the things that happened here for doing a March Madness, totally right here in our community. All kinds of leaders have been on to talk about that. Ryan Vaughn was on to talk about the sports corporations, a quick reaction to the NCAA and how all that happened, and then a displacement in terms of the kind of facilities that you have to have. And we had Eric Newberger on here, who runs the unflappable, really, kind of Lucas Oil Stadium. But we had people from all walks of life, and we've had our celebrities on. Where are they now? We're going to have one of those this month as well as we wander through the rainy month of April. But you know, we're going to have Mayflowers out of it because it makes a lot of sense for you to not run into my billboard when you see it around town, but to come on and watch this show every Friday night. And please patronize those great sponsors of ours, folks like Jiffy Lube. Thank you, Steve Sanner, and like East Spot Spas. Those guys are doing wonderful work in terms of regenerative healing. So I know that you'll participate with them. We're bringing along Hope Training Academy, and those of you who want some sort of activity relative to your job searches and your job hunts. Well, you're going to do that, but we're going to come back with the unflappable one right here in a moment on Playing for Keeps.
Playing for Keeps, presented by Jiffy Lube. Playing for Keeps, presented by Jiffy Lube.
And welcome back to Playing for Keeps. I am your host, the voice, Milt Thompson, right here on WHMB's Channel 40 every Friday night at 9 p.m. I know you're going to join us and you're going to patronize those sponsors because they come in all kinds of fantastic shapes, sizes, and otherwise. But you know, sometimes you go way back with people, you know, and when I was even younger, there were younger ones with whom we've had some dealings. And I think we have the first brother act for the first time here on Playing for Keeps. And the other Benner guy we had on here a little while back, but we got the unflappable Benner on here today. Dave Benner, welcome to our show.
Thanks for being here. And just as a reminder to my brother Bill, I'm the much younger brother, and I was the better writer.
Well, he makes me painfully aware of that about you in all kinds of ways. He came before you a little bit in the writing, and you came, so you forgot all his mistakes.
Yeah.
And you became unflappable in your reporting.
Exactly.
Well, back in those days, tell us about your emergence into the whole world of journalism, which ultimately led you on this steep trajectory towards being the man for the Indiana Pacers. But where'd you start? And we even did a few television and radio shows way back in the day during that journalism start.
Well, it's crazy, the journalism thing. When I got out of high school, I had no idea what I was going to do. I was 17 years old, and our father worked at the newspaper, ran the job printing shop at the Indianapolis Star-News. They had an opening for a copy boy. And a copy boy is like the lowest thing on the rung. But it's like one of the best jobs ever because you got to learn the newspaper business from top to bottom. So I did that for 2.5 years, and I dabbled around in my spare time writing. Just different things. I'd write spoof stories or whatever, but then I finally decided that I had a knack for it. So I went to a gentleman by the name of Cliff Melvin at the Johnson County, or back then the Franklin Daily Journal, and said, could I help you on Friday nights covering high school football and basketball? And he said, yeah, and paid me like $10. You know, something like that to do a story. But for me, it was a great indoctrination to get into it. So again, I was doing that did that for like about a year, then went to school at Indiana University, went immediately to work for the Daily Student, and got into the writing thing and really loved it and enjoyed it. And during the summers or spring breaks, I go back and work in the Star Sports department with Bill. And eventually, after college, they hired me. So
Brotherly love.
yeah, brotherly love and newspaper love too.
Newspaper love, and that being a kind of sometimes a dying kind of a feature in our world these days, and wonder what that does to your heart when that's become something that you really truly love. I mean, is there other avenues for expressing?
Yeah, I mean, whether it be in Bill's case, Instagram,
Right. Okay.
or Facebook or
Right,
whatever,
right.
things like that. I'm more of a Twitter guy. So you have a little outlet there for like 140 characters or whatever the heck it is. But to me, it's short and sweet, and you don't have to merge all your time in it. But I enjoy Twitter. I like following humorous things on Twitter. I try to get away from the real news side of it, just stuff that'll make me laugh. I still read, the newspaper, whether it be in print or online. I enjoy reading Sports Illustrated still to this day. I enjoy good writing. I really do.
$10 a shot, right? I mean,
$10 a shot. Back
with
in the day.
inflation and present value of money, man, that's got to be $50.
At least.
At least $50. You got your feet wet.
Yeah.
Writing. Then obviously most people who are doing writing like that, they inevitably get on some sort of electronic media and become part of the gab machine out there, or the talking heads things. And I think that's when you and I first encountered one another. Not only in writing, I always tease Bill about writing about some of my clients and calling them brick mitts or what have you.
I called him Reek at one point, which was... And he still likes me to this day.
He still
so
likes you
that's
to this day. He's a tall man, so there you go.
Yeah.
We try to deal with those guys and with kid gloves, if you will. But they all have egos, just like we all have egos, right? And if we're going to write something, and we're going to make sure that we are going to stand by it.
Exactly.
You didn't run Bob Knight out of town. Your brother did that. So we'll leave that at your footsteps. But we'd be on talk shows, regular talk shows, whatever the topic du jour happens to be. And you always took a position that was maybe unlike what normal people would take. What caused you to be a contrarian other than becoming unflappable?
I think the one thing that I learned in journalism is that it's about relationships, and you try to be fair as much as possible, because your opinion influences other opinions out there. And you always had to be careful about that. And an old phrase, at the end of the day, we're all people with feelings, with egos and things like that. So I always try to stay even keel as much as possible. And that'd be whether, sitting in front of a typewriter or later a computer or whatever, or doing a radio talk show.
Right.
Or doing, a TV show, anything like that. You try to stay as neutral and as in the middle as possible. I wasn't into being controversial. I was into being fair and objective as much as possible, because I thought that was the way to go. Now, again, I would sit down in my spare time and do things spoof that never appeared in print or something like that, where I would let loose.
Right.
Then that was my outlet.
Gotcha. When you let your hair down and you really let it rip.
Back when I had hair.
Exactly, but not knowing who exactly was going to be reading it, per se.
Right.
Or what the size of the audience was, and now people count how many people follow them.
Well, I would always, and I would always tell the guys, when I covered the Pacers from 83 to 91, I'd always tell the players when they came in and met them and did things like that, I always said, look, I'll come to you after every game, good, bad, or indifferent, and ask you about the game. And if you decide that you don't want to talk to me, then you're leaving it up to me to form an opinion. And that's not fair to you, and that's not fair to the fans. So you are entitled to give your side of the story. And they all respected that, and I think that was very important in helping me in developing relationships with the teams. And eventually, when I got off the Pacer beat and covered Notre Dame football and Indiana basketball, it helped me in that regard too. Because when I went down to cover IU basketball my last year at the paper, that was Damon Bailey's senior year. Bob Knight obviously was the coach. Well, you read the stories. You saw the film clips. You knew kind of what you were getting into. But until you cover it, you don't know what you're getting into.
You don't know what you're getting into.
But I went into it like, Bill was a columnist. Robin Miller was a columnist.
Right.
So they were the guys throwing the darts.
Right.
I was the middleman. I was the good cop.
So that's kind of what my question. You said reporting, and some people mistake reporting for someone who's actually an opinion column.
Right.
And how do you draw that distinction? How does the profession draw that distinction? And why do the consumers somehow can't follow the difference?
Well, the distinction is when you're a reporter, you're there to report on, in my case, the game. You know, my opinion doesn't really matter too much. Now, when I was covering the Pacers, they had me like write a column a week
Right.
that they wanted opinion on. And so in that case, I got to let it out just, you know, a little bit on some different subjects. You know, I managed to tick off David Stern a couple times during my tenure as a beat writer.
You never heard back from him, though, did you?
He got into me a couple times, which David would do. If he read something he didn't like, he would let you know.
Certainly.
But that was kind of my one outlet a week during basketball season, was I got to do that. But as a reporter, you have an obligation to just, you know, deliver the facts, deliver a story, let the reader decide.
Well, the early 80s, late 80s, early 90s for the Pacers were not necessarily the glory days, right?
No, bad teams, great guys.
Bad team, great guys. So tell us about some of the stories on a bad team with great guys. I mean, sometimes it's just flipped when you got a lot of winning. And
well, that was the thing. When you cover them, you couldn't really rip them because they were what they were. You know, the talent level was not there yet. But by the time I got to the end of covering them, we had Reggie, we had Rick, we had Chuck Person. And, you know, and Chuck Person was a guy that all of a sudden you're dealing with a rather volatile person.
You think.
Again, a great guy.
The Rifleman.
The Rifleman, great guy. So you always had to temper yourself with, you know, Chuck going off on you with what his message was, and then you having to counterbalance that and sit there and talk to Chuck about it and say, hey, look, you know, I'm doing my job, you're doing your job. He got mad at me one time because I ran up a Bernard King. Every time Bernard King played against him, he'd score like 50.
Yep, easily.
And so I wrote a story about Chuck's defense, and Chuck went off on me. And I finally said, Chuck, here's the facts.
Right,
here's the numbers.
right,
Deal
right.
with it.
Well, that was kind of a precursor for later on in your Pacers career, and the unflappable one was getting it on with Chuck Person so that he could later on get it on with some other superstars of the Pacers. And he did it in an unflappable way, and we're going to come back and talk with David Bitter right after these words, right back here on Playing for Keeps.
Playing for Keeps, presented by Jiffy Lube. Playing for Keeps, presented by Jiffy Lube.
Welcome back to Playing for Keeps. I am your host, the voice, Milt Thompson. I want you coming back here every Friday night when we talk to some of the best people in sports around, not here just in central Indiana, but really around our globe. And you guys have caught on by now. You know, we've always kind of give them a little moniker that tells a little bit more about them. And we've been calling someone who got flappable with the Rifleman, Chuck Person, the unflappable one, because he knew how to handle it.
Yeah.
You were just talking a little bit off the mic about changes in the business and from social media to what are some of the other things that you think have really changed since you started?
Well, I mean, social media obviously is the biggest one, you know, between Twitter and now anybody can throw something out there on Twitter, whether they're credible or not, and it takes on a life of its own, and you have to either, you know, shoot it down or do whatever. So that's the big thing, and I view social media good and bad. You know, it's another venue, it's another outlet for people to express opinions and different things like that. So that's one of the biggies, and I think the other one is like a lot of the media people today, you know, promote themselves to try to get on television or try to get a radio show. Stephen A. Smith is a good friend of mine,
right?
And I tease him all the time about.
Right.
I said I knew you when you were a lowly beat writer.
And now you're a millionaire beat writer.
I said, what happened? Where did I go wrong?
Yeah. Well, you know, there's something to be said for building a story, promoting a story, or being the story.
Yes.
And if you are the story, that creates some animosity and or sometimes jealousy from others if you're trying to be that.
Well, that's one thing. You know, I've told some of our players who've had run-ins with the media. I said, the one thing is, well, when he comes in here, I'm going to tell him this, I'm going to tell him that. I said, no, you're not. I said, because then you're making him or her the story. I said, and that's not the objective of this. I said, the thing is when they come in, they ask you a question, you answer the question. Don't get involved in any controversy, because then it becomes something bigger than it really needs to be.
Then what happens when it really is a bigger story? When you've got the malice in the palace, and you've got things that you're doing in terms of crisis management, and how are you crafting stories, or help people craft stories, or
Honesty.
Honesty. Tell us about it.
Well, the thing is, don't lie about it. If something happened, don't lie about it, because then once the truth is found out, it's double jeopardy, because then people will call you out and then you lose all your credibility. If you make a mistake, come out, admit it, deal with it, and we move on. The sooner you bury it, the better off you are.
Because someone will dig it back up.
Yeah, always. And it gets stuck back up on anniversaries and all that stuff.
Sure. Well, you had this wonderful reporting career, if you will,
Yeah.
and doing the work for the Notre Dame, IU basketball, obviously brand names around these areas here, where people are looking to you because you are behind the scenes. You're seeing what's really kind of going on in the mix. But there comes an opportunity with our dear Indiana Pacers that was a little bit bigger than just being the beat writer.
Yeah, Dale Ratterman, who preceded me in this job, he, great guy, he was getting bumped up into a business role, and he asked me if I'd be interested, and I said, I don't know anything about this. And he goes, well, you had good relationships with the media and with the management when you were a beat writer. You know the local media, we think you'd be pretty good at it. So he gave me a year to think about it. And then after a year, I was like 39, single at the time, and I figured, you know what? I grew up with the Pacers. I love the Pacers. This is a great opportunity. I should take advantage of it. And so then I made the leap.
And what was the job description for you that you didn't know very much about at the time?
I had to wear a tie. I didn't know how to tie a tie.
Didn't know how to tie a tie. That's an incredible story. The unflappable one didn't know how to tie his tie, but he was getting there to box it up with folks like some of the great players that did emerge out from underneath their rock, if you will, as a team and moving forward. Well, you're not the only media representative there. I mean, you've got former players like Quinn Buckner, who is in the media, and of course, Chris Denary, our old good friend, and as they get to it. And then, of course, Bobby Sicklener. We can't go very much longer without talking about not only his great coaching career, but his activity as a broadcaster, as someone who's doing color commentary and coining phrases that we use in marketing and boom babies and all the others. Tell us about your relationship with these other folks that are part of the media, and how does it relate to the job that you were given once you learned how to tie that tie?
Well, I think I tell college students, whenever I meet with them, I said one of the key things that I think that you should do if you want to get into the PR business is to get an internship in the media, to understand where they're coming from and what they're doing. And I think that having been in the media for the 16 years that I think that was invaluable help in me dealing with this job, because I knew where they were coming from. And I also knew that you couldn't, every time something negative was said about you, you didn't respond, because you'd be responding every day if you weren't playing well or whatever would happen, whether it be an off-court issue or thing like that. You just could not overreact. You had to, like as they say, stay the course. I had a good attorney friend who always said, "Save your bullets," and I tried to live by that credo for the entire career.
I don't know if it's a good friend attorney or a good attorney friend. I don't get confused by either too often. So.
Yeah, I was wondering.
Athletes are people too, and professional athletes are also people too. But when you have the rose-colored glasses of a fan, or you have shady-colored glasses of a fan, all athletes are into the same bucket. But the individuals you had to deal with, what was your approach to getting to know them in terms of developing a relationship during a busy, crazy time in their lives as well as the lives of the team?
Well, we're around them every day, and basically we go to them with requests almost every day. So you get to deal with them on that type of a basis. You travel with them, you deal with them in good times and bad times. Whether it be professionally or personally. You go through a lot with these guys. And how you relate to them. I always say the relationships is the most important part of this job. It's not, how do you handle crisis management? Well, it's through the relationship that you built with the player. Like I said, going back to being honest and dealing with things forthright. So that was like one of the key things is just, engaging these guys every day, whether it's a hello, how are you, how's your family, that type of thing, to let them know that you care, because you genuinely do care, because we work together every day for 9 months straight.
Right.
Without hardly any breaks.
Right. Well, they're kind of like your family, right?
Right.
But there's always somebody in the family, that sticks out maybe sometime that's, that you have a little more fun with. And we're going to talk about the one that helped you retire not too long ago after that. But give me a couple other players that were either your favorite or your quirkiest or some good stories that were behind them.
I always looked at the players as the guys who were, helpful to me.
Right.
Look out for me.
Of course.
Among them, Travis Best, Sam Perkins, Victor Oladipo, Paul George, Glenn Robinson, Miles Turner on the current team.
Mm-hmm.
These guys, they got it. They
professionals.
And I tell people, I said, that's not to discredit anybody else. 98% of the people that I dealt with were great. Which
No, I understand. But some people
helped me last.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But some people just kind of say, you get it, so I'm going to give you anything that you need as well, right?
Sam Mitchell back in the day.
Oh, interesting.
Great guy.
Yes.
Volatile, great guy, didn't like doing media. And you get in the playoffs, everybody's got to do the media.
Absolutely.
And Sam didn't hate doing the media. And he and I went back and forth all the time on that. And today, we're good friends.
Good friends. Well, people would say, what about Meta World Peace or,
or
Ron Artest?
Great guy. Ron Artest, great guy. Stephen Jackson, great guy. I never saw either one of them refuse an autograph.
That's what sometimes people don't see when you get your reputation kind of determined.
Yeah.
Well, this journey of yours lasted for a good time. What a good ride, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
great ride.
Right into a retirement, big time ceremonies. Tell us about Reggie Miller and your ritual, because people want to know from the unflappable one how he was not flapping.
In a quick nutshell, Reggie is the most superstitious individual I ever dealt with. So I'm standing out by the court one game just drinking a Pepsi or 7-Up, I don't know what it was, but anyway, he comes by and he says, "Can I have a drink?" I said, "Sure." He has a drink, has a good game, we win. Next game I'm out there, no drink. He goes, "Where's the drink?" So I had to run back and get a drink, come back out and do it, wins the game, has a good game. If we lost, I had to change the drink. So then, a year later, however long later, come out there with the drink, I'm waiting. He finally comes around right before the buzzer's about to go off at the end of the warm-ups. And I start cussing him out, saying, "I'm standing out here looking like an idiot, and you ignoring me, blah, blah, blah." And he takes the drink, and he comes back and goes, "Well, let me tell you something. I'm going to show you, blah, blah, blah." So the next game, we win.
Right,
he has a good
right.
game. Next game, guess what happens? He comes out, and he says, "You going to say anything?"
You going to yell at me again?
So that started all that. And, if we have the time, the best story of it all, we're in Milwaukee. There's a guy wearing a Pacer Reggie Miller jersey. And so I told Reggie, I said, "See that guy over there?" I said, "I'm always curious about, how they become Pacer fans." And the guy says, "Well," he says, "I'm not a Pacer fan." He said, "I got a Reggie Miller jersey because it's half off because you're half the player you used to be."
Oh my goodness, now, that is a good story. The unflappable one, I'm certain he responded in kind to make sure that was happening.
He did.
But Dave Benner, thank you so much for blessing us with your show, with your retirement. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And so many people showed up for it because you are the unflappable one, Dave Benner. Right here on Playing for Keeps. Come back here same time next week.